The crystalline walls of Apex Prime caught the light of 7 different suns, casting rainbow patterns across the massive chamber where the Galactic Council gathered. Ambassador Elena Kovacs stood at the center of the circular room, feeling very small and very alone. Around her, in elevated platforms that seemed designed to make visitors feel inferior, sat the representatives of the 7 elder races who had ruled the galaxy for longer than human civilization had existed. She could feel their eyes on her. Some had many eyes. Some had none at all, but sensed her presence in ways she couldn't fully understand. The speaker, a tall insectoid Kethrin whose carapace shimmered with iridescent blues and greens, clicked its mandibles together in what the translation software rendered as a polite cough. Ambassador Kovacs, humanity has submitted its application for membership in the Galactic Council. We have reviewed your species' technological level, social development, and cultural achievements. Elena waited. She had done this job long enough to know when bad news was coming. Wrapped in diplomatic language, your species shows promise, the speaker continued. However, the Council has determined that humanity is not yet ready for full membership. You lack the technological sophistication of even our youngest member races. Your lifespan is tragically short, limiting your perspective, and your history shows a concerning pattern of internal conflict. Unquote. A Valorian representative, a being of pure energy contained in a magnetic field, pulsed with colors that the translator interpreted as agreement. Humanity is very young, very aggressive. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, you will be ready to join civilized space. Elena kept her face neutral, though anger burned in her chest. Humanity had worked for 2 centuries to reach this point. 2 centuries of following every protocol, respecting every boundary, proving themselves peaceful. And still, they were dismissed like children asking to sit at the adult table. The Council offers humanity probationary status, the speaker announced. You may observe our proceedings. You may trade with member species under supervision, but you will have no vote, no seat, and no protection under galactic law. This is our decision. Elena bowed slightly, the way protocol demanded. The United Earth Government thanks the Council for its consideration. We accept the probationary status and hope to prove ourselves worthy of full membership in time. The dismissal was clear. As Elena turned to leave, she caught the eye of the Turath representative, a massive reptilian creature whose scales were scarred from ancient battles. Unlike the others, he didn't look at her with contempt. He looked at her with something that might have been curiosity. Or perhaps recognition. She filed that away for later. Outside the council chamber, Elena's assistant, James Park, waited with a data pad and a sympathetic expression. Probationary status. No vote, no protection, no respect. Elena walked quickly through the corridors of Apex Prime, nodding politely to the various alien species that passed them. Some nodded back. Most ignored them. We're officially the galaxy's unwanted stepchildren. James fell into step beside her. There's something else. Military Command wants to talk to you. Encrypted channel. Priority 1. Elena frowned. About what? They didn't say. But Admiral Chen is moving the 3rd Fleet to new positions along the galactic rim. 7th and 9th Fleets are redeploying too. Complete radio silence protocol. M. B. M. That made no sense. Humanity only had 12 full fleets, and they were already stretched thin, protecting Earth's expanded territory. Moving 3 of them away from established patrol routes was a massive commitment of resources. Did they give a reason? Standard precautions, they said. Precautions against what? Elena stopped walking and looked at her assistant. We're at peace. There are no threats on the rim. There's nothing out there but empty space and old mining colonies. James shrugged helplessly. That's all they told me. But the orders came directly from Earth Defense Command. signed by the Secretary General herself. Elena felt an uneasy stirring in her stomach. Something was happening. Something the military knew about but wasn't sharing. She'd have to make some calls when she got back to the human embassy. Across the galaxy, in the outer reaches where stars were sparse and the darkness between them vast. The mining colony on Kethrin Outpost. 7 went about its routine. 3,000 Kethrin workers extracted rare minerals from the asteroid field, processing them in massive orbital refineries that glowed like small suns in the void. Supervisor Thekhar checked the daily production reports, mandibles clicking with satisfaction. They were ahead of quota this quarter. The Hive Queen would be pleased. The sensors detected nothing unusual. That was the first strange thing, though Thekhar didn't know it yet. The second strange thing was the silence. The colony's communication array simply stopped transmitting in the middle of a routine update to the homeworld. No distress call, no warning, just silence. The third strange thing was that every living creature in the colony, all 3,000 Kethrin workers, stopped what they were doing at exactly the same moment. They all turned to face the same direction, toward the empty darkness between stars. And then they started screaming. The screaming lasted for 17 seconds, before the colony's power grid failed completely. The orbital refineries went dark. The processing stations stopped spinning, and Kethrin Outpost 7 became a tomb floating in the void, though no one would discover this for another 6 hours. 2 days later, a Valorian research station investigating dark matter phenomena experienced a similar fate. This time, there were no screams, because Valorians had no mouths. But the last data transmission showed something impossible. Energy readings that shouldn't exist. Matter behaving in ways that violated every known law of physics. And then, just before the transmission cut off, a single image. Something massive. Something that absorbed light rather than reflected it. Something that should not be. The Galactic Council's response was measured and careful. They sent investigation teams to both sites. They analyzed the data. They consulted ancient records, and they came to a comfortable, rational conclusion. Equipment failures, probably related to unusual dark matter fluctuations in the region. Tragic, but explainable. Only a few of the oldest council members, those who had access to the most ancient archives, felt a cold thread of worry. The pattern was familiar. It matched records from 50,000 years ago, from a time the modern galaxy preferred to forget. But that was impossible. The void predators had been extinct for millennia. Everyone knew that. Still, as a precaution, the council ordered increased patrols in the outer reaches. Standard procedure. Nothing to worry about. Elena learned about the lost colonies from the public news feeds, same as everyone else. The official council statement was brief and unrevealing, but when she attended the next observer session, she noticed something. The council members were more tense than usual. Their discussions had an edge of urgency that hadn't been there before, and she noticed something else. Human ships were showing up on the tactical displays more often. Not in human territory, but scattered across the galactic rim, in positions that made no strategic sense. When she asked the Kethrin military liaison about it, he seemed surprised by the question. "Your vessels are operating in unclaimed space," he said, his mandibles clicking in what might have been confusion. "They have every right to be there. Though their patrol patterns are unusual." "Unusual how?" "They seem to be searching for something. But when we inquire, your military liaison simply says they are conducting standard exercises." The Kethrin tilted his head. "What are your ships looking for, Ambassador?" "I don't know," Elena admitted. And that was the truth. But she intended to find out. She spent 3 days trying to get answers from Earth. Most of her messages went unanswered. The few responses she received were vague and unhelpful. Routine operations. Standard protocols. Nothing to concern yourself with. It was maddening. On the 4th day, more colonies went silent. This time, 5 of them, across 3 different sectors. All in the outer reaches. All within a 6-hour window. The council could no longer dismiss it. As equipment failure or coincidence, an emergency session was called. For the first time since her arrival, Elena was invited to attend, not as an observer, but as a participant. She didn't know whether to feel honored or terrified. The council chamber was filled with representatives from every member species, their conversations creating a cacophony that the translation software struggled to keep up with. The mood was tense, fearful, even. Elena had never seen the elder races look uncertain before. The speaker called for order, and the chamber fell silent. We face a situation that requires immediate attention. 10 colonies have now gone silent across the outer reaches. Investigation teams have found no survivors. No bodies. Nothing but empty structures and ships. The energy signatures at each site match records from ancient times. Records of the void predators. End quote. A murmur ran through the chamber. Elena accessed her datapad, pulling up what little information was publicly available about the void predators. It wasn't much. Creatures from the darkness, between stars, biotechnological entities that had nearly wiped out all sentient life 50,000 years ago. They fed on energy and matter, leaving nothing behind. They had appeared without warning, devastated the galaxy, and then vanished just as mysteriously. Most modern scholars thought they were myths, exaggerations of some ancient natural disaster. The void predators are extinct. A Turath general rumbled, his voice deep and certain. They have been gone for 50 millennia. This must be something else. Then what? The Valorian representative pulsed. What else leaves no trace? What else creates these energy signatures? What else appears and vanishes without being detected? The argument continued for hours, going in circles. The council couldn't agree on what they were facing, let alone how to respond. Elena remained quiet, listening, learning, but her mind kept returning to one question. Why had Earth's military started moving ships weeks ago, before any colonies went silent? What did they know? As the session was breaking up, Elena approached the Turath general she had noticed before. Up close, he was even more imposing. Easily 3 meters tall, and built like a mountain. But his eyes were intelligent and sharp. General Krathzon, she said, bowing in the Turath manner. May I ask you a question? He looked down at her with an expression she couldn't read. You may ask, human ambassador? The void predators. How much do your people actually know about them? Krathzon was quiet for a long moment. Then, he gestured for her to follow him to a more private corner of the chamber. When he spoke, his voice was low. My people keep the old stories. Not the sanitized council histories, but the real accounts. Songs of the long dark, we call them. According to our ancestors, the void predators were not defeated 50,000 years ago. They were driven into hibernation by something even more terrifying. What could be more terrifying than creatures that nearly ended all life in the galaxy? That, Krathzon said, is what the old songs do not say. Only that there were others in the darkness. Others who fought the predators, and won. And then those others disappeared, and we hoped both would never return. He looked at her intently. Tell me, Ambassador, why are human ships positioned exactly where the ancient texts say the void predators first emerged? Why is your species preparing for a war that officially doesn't exist? Elena met his gaze steadily. I don't know, General, but I intend to find out. That night, in her quarters at the human embassy, Elena finally got through to Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of Earth's Third Fleet. The Admiral's face on the screen looked tired, much older than Elena remembered from their last meeting. Elena, I suppose you have questions. You could say that. The Council is panicking about void predators. Human ships are scattered all over the rim, and no one will tell me what's happening. So yes, I have questions. 4. I creator. Very I. Chen was silent for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was heavy. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. The Secretary General authorized me to brief you only because you're about to be in the middle of it. She took a deep breath. 3 months ago, deep space listening posts started picking up strange signals from the outer reaches. Signals that matched patterns in very old, very classified human archives. Archives from before Earth, from before we even remember where we came from. Elena felt her blood go cold. Before Earth? What are you talking about? Elena, what do you know about human evolution? Really know? We evolved on Earth. Africa. Over millions of years. End quote. End quote. That's what we've always believed. But recent genetic research has found anomalies, markers in our DNA that don't match Earth's evolutionary tree, instincts that make no sense for a species that developed on a single planet. And buried deep in our oldest genetic memory, there are patterns, nightmares that every human culture shares. Fear of the dark, fear of being hunted, the feeling that something is watching from just beyond our vision. End quote. You're saying humans didn't evolve on Earth? I'm saying we don't know, but we're starting to remember, and what we're remembering is terrifying. Chen leaned closer to the camera. When those signals started, people across Earth began having the same dreams. Dreams of darkness, dreams of war, dreams of hunting and being hunted. And some of our oldest soldiers, the ones with the most combat experience, they started recognizing things, tactics, patterns, like they'd fought this enemy before, even though they never had. Elena's hands were shaking. The void predators. We think so. And we think humans encountered them before, long ago, in a place we've forgotten. We're not sure of anything else. But our genetic memory is screaming warnings. So we moved our fleets. We started preparing. And Elena? Chen's expression was grim. We think they remember us too. Whatever these things are, they're not just attacking random colonies. They're moving toward human space. They're coming for Earth. And I think they want revenge for something that happened so long ago, we can't even remember what we did. The transmission ended, leaving Elena alone in the dark room, her mind racing. In the silence, she became aware of her own heartbeat, quick and anxious. And somewhere in the back of her mind, in a place older than memory, something ancient stirred, a voice that whispered, "They're back. The hunt begins again." Across the galaxy, in the darkness between stars, something massive began to move. Something that had slept for 50,000 years, dreaming of prey that had escaped. And in that darkness, a million red eyes opened, remembering their ancient enemy. The void predators had returned. And they remembered humanity. The Valorian homeworld of Lumina hung in space like a jewel, its entire surface covered in crystalline structures that housed billions of energy-based life forms. From a distance, it looked peaceful, beautiful even. Admiral Veshtara of the Valorian Defense Fleet had spent 2 centuries protecting this world, and she had never imagined she would watch it die. The first wave hit without warning. One moment, space was empty. The next, reality itself seemed to tear apart, and they came through. The void predators were not ships. They were not machines. They were something worse. Something that existed between dimensions. Massive organic entities covered in what looked like black metal, but moved like living flesh. Each one was the size of a small moon, and they numbered in the hundreds. Veshtara's fleet responded immediately. 500 warships, the pride of Valorian military might, moved to intercept. Their weapons were based on pure energy manipulation, capable of tearing apart planets. They had never failed before. They failed now. The first energy lance struck a predator directly, a beam of concentrated power that should have vaporized anything it touched. Instead, the creature absorbed it. Its hide rippled like water, and the energy simply disappeared into its mass. Then it shuddered, grew slightly larger, and turned its attention toward the source of the attack. What followed was not a battle. It was a massacre. The predators moved faster than anything their size should be able to move. They phased in and out of normal space, appearing beside ships and crushing them like insects. Worse, they fed. Veshtara watched in horror as a predator enveloped 3 cruisers in some kind of field, and the ships simply dissolved. Their energy forms absorbed directly into the creature. The Valorian crews didn't have time to scream. They just ceased to exist. All ships, fall back, Veshtara ordered, but it was too late. The predators had already surrounded the planet. They extended tendrils of darkness toward Lumina's surface, toward the billions of Valorians who couldn't evacuate, who had nowhere to run. And they began to feed. The planet's glow dimmed. The crystalline structures cracked and went dark. The Valorians on the surface, pure energy beings who had lived for thousands of years, felt themselves being drawn upward, pulled into the darkness, consumed. Their collective consciousness, which had united them for eons, shattered into a million screaming fragments before going silent. Veshtara's flagship was one of the last ships to escape. As she ordered her navigator to jump to hyperspace, she watched her homeworld die. The predators drained it completely, leaving behind only a dark husk, a dead rock where a thriving civilization had existed minutes before. The news reached Apex Prime 6 hours later. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, and for the first time in recorded history, the chamber was filled with genuine fear. How many survived? The speaker asked, his mandibles trembling. Fewer than 10,000. The Valorian representative pulsed weakly, their energy field flickering with grief. From a population of 7 billion, the predators consumed everything else. This is impossible, a Kethran senator said. The historical records said the void predators were dangerous, but this is beyond comprehension. How did our ancestors ever survive them? They didn't, the Turath general Krathzon said grimly. 90% of all sentient life was destroyed in the first month of the invasion. It took 50 years to push them back, and even then we didn't defeat them. They just left. Then what do we do? Someone asked. How do we fight creatures that can't be killed? The chamber erupted in panicked discussion. Proposals were shouted down almost as soon as they were made. Send the fleet. No. Conserve forces. Evacuate the outer reaches. No. Stand and fight. Call for ancient weapons from the archives. Use the Omega protocols. Abandon the affected sectors. Every suggestion met with counter-arguments and fear. Elena Kovacs sat in the human observer section, listening to the chaos. She checked her datapad for the 17th time. Still, no response from Admiral Chen. Human fleets had gone completely dark 24 hours ago. All communications ceased. She didn't know if they were destroyed or just maintaining radio silence, and the uncertainty was eating her alive. The speaker finally called for order. We must respond with the full force of the Galactic Defense Fleet. Every member species will contribute ships. We will meet these creatures in battle and drive them back. Where? Krathzon asked. They can appear anywhere. They phase through dimensions. How do you fight an enemy that can be everywhere and nowhere? We protect our core worlds. We establish defensive perimeters. We use every weapon at our disposal. And if that fails? The Valorian representative asked quietly. No one had an answer. The speaker's attention turned to Elena. Ambassador Kovacs, your species has been curiously silent during this crisis. Where are your fleets? Will humanity contribute to the defense of the galaxy? Elena stood, feeling every eye in the chamber focus on her. Honored speaker, I have been trying to reach Earth's military command for the past day. I have received no response. I cannot speak for our fleet movements without authorization. Convenient, someone muttered. The humans hide while we die. However, Elena continued, her voice stronger. I can tell you this. At the time, I didn't understand why. Now I suspect our military intelligence detected something the rest of the galaxy missed. If our fleets are silent, It's likely because they're engaged in combat operations and maintaining tactical security. Then call them, the speaker demanded. Order them to report. This is not the time for human secrets. I don't have that authority. I'm a diplomat, not military command. But I will try. Elena left the chamber and went directly to the human embassy's secure communications room. She bypassed every protocol, used emergency channels, and finally, after 3 hours of trying, she got through. Not to Admiral Chen, but to a communications officer on the UES Defiant, a destroyer on the galactic rim. The young officer's face was covered in sweat and grime, and behind him Elena could see emergency lighting and crew members running. The ship was at battle stations. Ambassador, I can't talk long. We're about to engage. Engage what? Where is the Third Fleet? Scattered across 17 sectors. We've been hunting these things for 3 weeks. The Admiral thinks, if we can take them out in small groups before they mass up, we might have a chance. 3 weeks? Elena felt dizzy. You've been fighting the Void Predators for 3 weeks, and no one knew? Orders from the top. Complete radio silence. They didn't want the galaxy to panic before we understood what we were facing. The ship shook, and the officer grabbed his console. Ma'am, I have to go. Tell the council this. We're not hiding. We're fighting. And we're going to keep fighting until these things are dead or we are. Defiant out. The transmission cut off, leaving Elena staring at a blank screen. She sat down heavily, her mind racing. 3 weeks. Human ships had been engaging the Void Predators since before anyone else even knew they existed. How? How had they known? She remembered what Admiral Chen had said. Genetic memory. Ancient nightmares. Humans recognizing enemy patterns they shouldn't know. It was insane. Impossible. But so were creatures that ate energy and phased through dimensions. Elena returned to the council chamber and relayed what she had learned. The reaction was mixed. Some seemed relieved that humans were fighting. Others were suspicious. The Kethran military liaison demanded proof. Show us, he clicked. Show us these human victories. If your fleets are defeating Void Predators, we need to see their tactics. I don't have tactical data. I barely have confirmation they're engaged. Quote, 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 then we have only your word, Ambassador. Forgive us if that seems insufficient. Before Elena could respond, alarms began blaring throughout Apex Prime. Every tactical display in the chamber lit up red. 15 Void Predators had just appeared in the system, and they were heading directly for the council station. Panic erupted. Representatives ran for evacuation ships. Station security tried to maintain order, but failed. The chamber descended into chaos. Elena stood frozen, watching the tactical display. 15 creatures, each one massive enough to swallow a battleship whole. The station's defenses were powering up, but after what happened to the Valorian homeworld, she didn't think they would be enough. Nothing would be enough. Then something appeared on the display that made her heart leap. Ships dropping out of hyperspace. Not council ships. Human ships. The UES Valkyrie, a battlecruiser, emerged first, followed by 20 destroyers and 30 frigates. It was a significant force, but still vastly outnumbered by the massive predators. Elena watched helplessly as the human fleet moved to intercept. What happened next defied everything she knew about space combat. The human ships didn't use energy weapons. Instead, they fired kinetic rounds. Massive chunks of metal accelerated to relativistic speeds. When they hit, they actually damaged the predators. Not much, but the creature's hide was breached, black ichor leaking into space. The predators turned their attention to the human fleet, and that's when the tactics got stranger. The human ships scattered, moving in erratic patterns that made no sense. They avoided direct combat, instead focusing on hit-and-run attacks. When a predator phased through dimensions to appear beside a human destroyer, the destroyer was already moving, having somehow anticipated the attack. One human frigate took a calculated risk, ramming directly into a predator's side at full speed. The impact should have been suicide, but the crew had already evacuated in escape pods. The ship's reactor detonated inside the creature's mass, and the predator actually shrieked, a sound that transmitted through space itself, and made every living being in the system feel primal terror. The creature died, breaking apart into fragments that dissolved into nothing. The council members watching the tactical display fell silent. One human ship had just killed a void predator, the first confirmed kill in the new war. But the cost was the ship itself, and would have been the entire crew if they hadn't abandoned it first. The battle continued for 2 hours. The human fleet used every unconventional tactic imaginable. They used light patterns that seemed to confuse the predators. They targeted specific areas on the creatures' bodies as if they knew where the weak points were. They worked in coordinated groups that moved like pack hunters surrounding prey. By the time reinforcements from the Galactic Defense Fleet arrived, the humans had killed 3 predators and driven the rest away. They had also lost 9 ships and nearly 2,000 crew, but they had won. The station was saved. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the Council's main display, her image projected to every screen in the chamber. Galactic Council. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Fleet. We apologize for the radio silence, but operational security demanded it. We have been engaging void predators across multiple sectors for the past 3 weeks. We have developed tactics that work, but they're costly and require precise execution. The speaker found his voice. How? How did you know how to fight them? Chen's expression was difficult to read. That's complicated, and I think it's time you all knew the truth about humanity's origins. But that conversation needs to happen in person. With your permission, I'd like to dock and address the full council. Permission granted, the speaker said immediately. I can try, Chen said, but the truth is going to be difficult to accept. For all of us. 2 hours later, Admiral Chen stood in the council chamber, with Elena beside her. The room was packed with representatives from every species, all of them desperate for information that might save their civilizations. Chen activated a holographic display. Members of the Galactic Council. What I'm about to tell you is based on recent discoveries in human genetic memory and ancient data recovered from our oldest archives. We've always believed humans evolved on Earth. That was wrong. Earth is where we settled, but it's not where we came from. The display showed a region of space far from any stars, a dark expanse where matter was sparse and light was nearly non-existent. 60,000 years ago, humanity existed here, in what we now call the abyssal expanse. We didn't evolve on a planet. We evolved in space itself, in the debris fields and rogue planetoids of the darkest region of the galaxy. And we weren't alone. The display shifted, showing images reconstructed from genetic memory. Massive shapes in the darkness, creatures that fed on energy and matter. The void predators. Proto-humanity encountered the void predators at the dawn of our species. We should have gone extinct. Instead, we adapted. We learned to think like them, because we lived among them. We learned to hunt them because we had no choice. For thousands of years, we fought a war in the darkness that the rest of the galaxy never knew about. The chamber was absolutely silent. Eventually, we won. We drove the predators into hibernation and escaped the expanse. We found Earth and settled there. And over time, we forgot our origins. But our instincts remained. Our fear of the dark. Our aggressive tendencies. Our ability to recognize predator patterns. These aren't accidents of evolution. They're survival traits, from a war we couldn't remember. Chen looked around the chamber. Until now, the predators are back, and our genetic memory is waking up. Human soldiers are recognizing tactics they shouldn't know. We're anticipating enemy movements because we've fought these things before, even if we don't consciously remember it. This is madness, someone said. You're saying humans are some kind of weapon species? I'm saying we're survivors. Chen replied. And right now, we're the only species in this galaxy that knows how to fight these things and win. The question is, will you let us help you? The speaker leaned forward. What do you need? Chen's answer was simple and terrifying. Everything. Complete military command of all galactic forces. Unrestricted authority to deploy ships as I see fit, and trust that we know what we're doing, even when our tactics seem insane. You're asking us to surrender control of our entire military to a species we barely know? I'm asking you to survive, Chen said, because the predators remember us too. And they're not just attacking random colonies anymore. They're coming for Earth. They're bringing their full swarm, and when they do, it's going to be the largest battle this galaxy has seen in 50,000 years. You can either fight beside us, or watch humanity die, and hope the predators don't come for you next. How long? Krathzon asked. How long until they reach Earth? Chen checked her data pad. Our scouts estimate 3 weeks, maybe less. Then we have 3 weeks to prepare for the war that will decide the fate of every living species in this galaxy. The Turath general stood, his massive form radiating determination. I vote to grant the humans full military authority. Better to fight together than die alone. One by one, the other representatives agreed. Even those who were skeptical, even those who were afraid, they all knew Chen was right. There was no other choice. As the council chamber emptied, Elena found herself standing next to General Krathzon. The old Turath warrior looked at her with an expression that might have been respect. Your species frightens me, Ambassador. I think that's a good thing. Why is that good? Because if humans frighten me, then the void predators should be absolutely terrified. He placed a clawed hand on her shoulder. Tell your admiral, we, Turath, stand with you. We may not remember the ancient war, but we remember how to fight. Show us how to kill these things, and we will paint the void with their blood. Elena felt tears stinging her eyes, though she couldn't explain why. Maybe it was relief. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe it was her genetic memory recognizing something her conscious mind couldn't quite grasp. The hunt was beginning again. And this time, humanity wouldn't fight alone. Across the galaxy, the void predators gathered their forces. Thousands of them, emerging from their hibernation, remembering their ancient enemy. They had been hunted once, driven to sleep, nearly destroyed. Now they would have their revenge. They would find the descendants of those who had dared to resist them, and they would feed until nothing remained. But as the swarm moved toward Earth, something in their collective consciousness stirred. A memory from the ancient war. A warning from those who had fought the humans before and barely survived. The prey that fought back. The creatures who hunted in the darkness and refused to die. The things that should have been food, but became predators themselves. For the first time in 50,000 years, the void predators felt something they had never experienced before. The faint, distant echo of fear. The war room deep inside Earth's military headquarters was lit by dozens of holographic displays showing fleet movements across 17 sectors. Admiral Marcus Okonkwo stood at the center of it all, a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Around him, military officers from 7 different species tried to make sense of the tactical situation. It wasn't going well. This makes no sense. A Kethran commander clicked, his mandibles working in agitation. You want us to disable our shields? Shields are the foundation of defensive strategy. We might as well paint targets on our hulls. That's exactly what we want, Marcus said patiently. He had been having this same argument for 3 days now. The predators feed on energy. Your shields are just batteries for them. Every time you raise shields, you're giving them a meal. But without shields, their weapons will tear through our hulls. Their weapons already tear through your shields. The difference is, without shields, you're harder to detect, and they get no energy boost from attacking you. Marcus pulled up combat footage from the Battle of Apex Prime. Look at this. See how the Predator targets the Valorian cruiser first? That ship had the strongest energy signature. The Predator went straight for it, like a shark to blood in the water. The Valorian officer flickered with distress. You are asking energy-based life forms to dim themselves. This is like asking you to stop breathing. Repros. I'm asking you to survive, Marcus said. And if that means learning to operate at lower energy levels, then yes. That's exactly what I'm asking. The Predators hunt by energy signature first, mass second. Make yourself less appealing. As prey, a Turath officer, a female named Keshtara, leaned forward over the tactical table. Unlike the others, she seemed to grasp what Marcus was saying. You speak as if you've hunted these creatures before. As if you know their behaviors intimately. Marcus met her eyes. We have. Or, our ancestors did. We just didn't remember until they came back. Genetic memory, Keshtara said. Your Admiral Chen explained this. But how can you trust instincts from 60,000 years ago? How do you know they're accurate? Because they're keeping my people alive, Marcus said simply. He pulled up casualty reports. Since we engaged the Predators 3 weeks ago, human forces have a 73% survival rate in direct combat. Everyone else who's fought them has less than 12%. The difference isn't better technology or superior firepower. It's that we know how these things think, because we evolved fighting them. He activated another display, this one showing what looked like psychological profiles. Void predators aren't mindless. They learn, they adapt, they remember. But they follow patterns. They're apex predators, and apex predators always follow certain rules. They test prey first, looking for weakness. They prefer easy kills over hard ones. They can be confused by unexpected behavior, and most importantly, they can be scared. Scared? A Kethran senator who had been observing scoffed. Those things destroyed my homeworld. They don't feel fear. Everything that lives can feel fear, Marcus said. Especially predators. They're just not used to it because they're usually the ones causing it. But make them hurt enough times. Make them associate you with pain instead of food, and they'll hesitate. That hesitation is what we exploit. He pulled up more combat data, showing dozens of engagements. Look at these patterns. Every time we bloody them badly enough, they withdraw and reassess. They're cautious. That's good for us, because cautious predators make mistakes. This still sounds like speculation, the Kethran commander said, based on instinct rather than science. You're right, Marcus admitted. It is instinct. But right now, instinct is all we have that works. You can follow your scientific doctrine and get slaughtered. Or you can trust that humans spent 10,000 years learning how to kill these things. And maybe, just maybe, we remember enough to do it again. The room fell silent. Finally, General Krathzon, the senior Turath representative, spoke. I will follow your tactics, Admiral. My fleet will disable shields, arm kinetic weapons, and adopt these pack-hunting formations you propose. If my people die, at least we die trying something new, rather than repeating ancient failures. One by one, the other commanders agreed, though some more reluctantly than others. Marcus felt a small measure of relief. He hadn't been sure they would listen. 3 weeks ago, these people had seen humans as primitive newcomers. Now, they were betting their civilizations on human instincts that couldn't be explained or proven scientifically. Good, Marcus said. Now, let's talk about the real problem. Our scouts report the main swarm is forming up in the outer reaches. Thousands of predators, maybe more. They're heading for Earth, and they'll be here in 2 weeks. We need to decide where and how we make our stand. Why not defend Earth directly? Keshtara asked. Make them come to us, use the orbital defenses. Because if we let them reach Earth, we've already lost, Marcus said. He pulled up a star chart. The predators are gathering here. In the Abyss, Nebula. That's their staging ground. From there, They'll move toward human space in one massive wave. If we meet them at Earth, we'll be fighting in our own space, where every destroyed ship rains debris on our colonies, where every lost battle means civilian casualties. We can't let that happen. Then where? Krothzon asked. Marcus pointed to a system marked in red, halfway between the Abyss Nebula and Earth. Here. The Terminus system. It's an empty system. No colonies, no resources, just a dead star and some worthless rocks. But it's a natural choke point. If we can force them to engage us there, we control the battlefield. And if we lose? Someone asked. If we lose, we fall back to secondary positions and try again. But we have to hurt them at Terminus. We have to show them that every meter of space they want to take will cost them blood. Marcus looked around the room. I won't lie to you. This battle is going to be brutal. We're going to lose ships. We're going to lose people. But if we fight smart, if we use terrain and tactics, instead of brute force, we might just survive. Might, the Kethran commander repeated. You offer us might against certain death. Yeah, Marcus said. But it's the best might humanity has to offer. And it's kept us alive for 60,000 years. I'll take those odds. While the military prepared for war, Elena Kovacs found herself in a very different kind of meeting. Deep in Earth's genetic research facility, she sat across from Dr. Sarah Kim, the scientist who had first discovered the anomalies in human DNA that led to the revelation about humanity's true origins. You wanted to understand genetic memory, Dr. Kim said, pulling up images of DNA sequences. It's not like regular memory. You can't just remember something that happened to your ancestors. But instincts, patterns, responses to specific stimuli, those can be encoded genetically and passed down. So humans are born knowing how to fight void predators? Not exactly. We're born with predispositions. When a human sees a predator for the first time, their brain recognizes patterns it shouldn't be able to recognize. They anticipate movements before they happen. They feel fear, but also familiarity, like seeing a nightmare you've had 1,000 times. Dr. Kim touched the screen, highlighting sections of the genetic code. What's fascinating is that these markers aren't distributed evenly. Some humans have stronger responses than others. We think it's related to how directly descended they are from the original population that left the abyssal expanse. Which humans? Statistically, humans of African descent show the strongest markers, which makes sense if that's where the survivors first settled on Earth. But every human population has them to some degree. We all carry the war in our genes. Elena stared at the genetic sequences, thinking about what this meant. Are we even human then? Or are we some kind of weapon species that just happens to look human? That's a philosophical question, not a scientific one, Dr. Kim said gently. But I can tell you this, every trait that makes us human, everything we consider fundamental to our nature, came from surviving in the abyssal expanse. Our social bonds, our persistence, our creativity, our aggression, those are all survival adaptations. We are who we are because of what we endured. That's terrifying, or it's empowering. Depends on how you look at it. Dr. Kim pulled up another screen. This one showing brain scans. We've been studying soldiers who have engaged the predators. Their brain activity during combat shows patterns we've never seen before. Parts of the brain that are normally dormant light up. It's like their minds are accessing information stored at a level deeper than conscious thought. Are they safe? Elena asked. These soldiers, whose brains are doing impossible things? Physically? Yes. Psychologically? Dr. Kim frowned. That's harder to say. Some report feeling like they're becoming someone else during combat. Like ancient warriors are fighting through them. Others have dreams of the abyssal expanse. Memories of a place they've never been. We're in uncharted territory here. Elena left the facility with more questions than answers. She walked through the streets of Geneva, looking at the people around her, wondering how many of them were feeling the call of genetic memory. How many were having nightmares about darkness and hunger and an endless war. Earth had changed in the past 3 weeks. Everyone knew about the void predators now. Everyone knew they were coming. But instead of panic, there was a strange calm. People went about their business, prepared for evacuation if needed, but didn't flee. It was like some collective unconscious decision had been made. Humanity would stand and fight. Elena found herself at a memorial wall, where names of soldiers killed, fighting the predators were being added daily. Thousands of names already, and the main battle hadn't even started. She traced her fingers over one name. Lieutenant James Park. Her assistant, who had volunteered for military service the day after the council meeting. He died on the UES Defiant, the same ship she had spoken to before Apex Prime was attacked. He was 26 years old. Ender, they're all so young, a voice said beside her. Elena turned to see an elderly woman, her dark skin weathered with age, her eyes carrying a depth of sadness. My grandson is up there somewhere. On one of those ships. He's 19. I'm sorry, Elena said. Don't be. He wanted to go. They all did. Said it felt right. Like they were born for this. The woman looked at Elena. You're the ambassador, aren't you? The one who was there when the council finally listened. Yes. Good. Then you can tell them something for me. Tell them humanity doesn't forget. We forgot once. Forgot where we came from. Forgot what we fought. But we remember now. And we're going to show those things that came for us why they should have stayed asleep. The woman walked away, leaving Elena alone with the memorial and her thoughts. She pulled out her comm device and sent a message to Admiral Chen. How do we win this? The response came quickly. We remember what they made us forget, and we become what we used to be. Not despite our nature, but because of it. In the outer reaches, the void predator swarm gathered. Thousands of massive creatures, each one capable of destroying a fleet, moving in perfect coordination toward human space. They communicated through means that science couldn't detect, sharing memories of the ancient war, memories of the prey that fought back. The prime entity, the largest and oldest of them all, remembered best. It had been there at the beginning, when the first humans appeared in the abyssal expanse. Small, fragile things that should have been consumed in moments. But they survived. They hid in places the predators couldn't reach. They learned to fight in the darkness. They wounded, killed, and worst of all, they drove the predators away. The prime entity had spent 50,000 years in hibernation, dreaming of revenge. Now, it would have it. The humans had grown comfortable on their little planet, had forgotten the lessons of the expanse. They would be easy prey this time. No darkness to hide in, no debris fields to navigate. Just open space where the predators ruled supreme. But something nagged at the prime entity's consciousness. The recent battles had gone wrong. The humans fought like their ancestors, using the same tactics, the same ruthless efficiency. They shouldn't remember. The genetic dilution, over 60,000 years, should have erased those instincts. Yet the humans moved like the ancient warriors, like they had never forgotten at all. It was impossible. But it was happening. And deep in its alien mind, the prime entity felt something it had never felt before. Not fear, not yet, but uncertainty. And for an apex predator that had ruled the darkness for eons, uncertainty was dangerously close to fear. Back on Earth, Marcus Okonkwo received the final fleet reports. Every available ship from every member species was moving toward the Terminus system. Human vessels, Tureth battlecruisers, Kethran carriers, even the remnants of the Valorian fleet. It was the largest combined military force in galactic history. Nearly 10,000 ships. The scouts reported that the Predator swarm numbered at least 5,000 entities, each one worth 100 normal ships in combat power. The math was not in humanity's favor, but Marcus had never been good at math anyway. He was good at war, and war wasn't about numbers. It was about will, about who wanted to survive more. He opened a channel to all fleet commanders. This is Admiral Okonkwo. In 72 hours, we engage the void predators at Terminus. Many of you are afraid. That's good. Fear keeps you sharp. But remember this. Those things out there are predators. They're used to hunting prey that runs, prey that hides. They're not used to prey that hunts back. We're going to teach them something they forgot 50,000 years ago. We're going to teach them that humans don't run. We don't hide. We hunt. And we don't stop until everything that came for us is dead. Make your peace with whatever gods you believe in. Say goodbye to whoever you love. And then get ready to show these things why they should have stayed in the dark where they belong. Okonkwo out. He closed the channel and allowed himself one moment of doubt. One moment of fear. Then he pushed it aside and went back to work. The hunt was about to begin. And there was no room for weakness. Not now. Not when humanity's survival, when the galaxy's survival, depended on remembering how to be the monsters that scared monsters. Across the galaxy, on thousands of ships, soldiers from dozens of species prepared for battle. They checked weapons, reviewed tactics, said prayers in languages that spanned the breadth of known space. They were terrified. They were determined. They were united in a way the galaxy had never seen. And in the darkness between stars, the void predators came, hungry and confident. Remembering their ancient prey but not understanding that prey had evolved, had survived, had become something that even the darkness should fear. The war that would decide the fate of all sentient life was about to begin. And this time, the galaxy would finally see what humanity truly was. Not the peaceful, civilized species they pretended to be, but the survivors, the hunters, the things that were born in darkness and learned to master it. The things that refused to die, no matter what came for them. The memory of darkness was returning. And with it came the fury of 60,000 years of forgotten war. The Terminus system had never been important before. Just a dead star surrounded by lifeless rocks, a place ships passed through on their way to somewhere that mattered. Now, it was the most important location in the galaxy. 10,000 ships from 7 different species waited in formation. Their positions carefully calculated by Admiral Marcus Okonkwo and his tactical team. Commander Elena Vasquez sat in the pilot seat of her fighter, the Razor's Edge, trying to keep her hands from shaking. Around her in the hangar bay of the UES Valiant, 200 other pilots performed their pre-flight checks, their faces showing the same mixture of fear and determination she felt. None of them had expected to see combat when they joined the service. They had thought they would patrol borders, maybe break up smuggling rings. Instead, they were about to fight creatures from nightmare. All pilots, this is flight control, a voice crackled over the comm. Enemy contacts emerging from hyperspace. Multiple contacts. Repeat. Multiple contacts. Launch. In 60 seconds. Elena's hands moved automatically, running through the startup sequence. The fighter's engines hummed to life beneath her. Around her, the other fighters did the same, like a swarm of angry insects preparing to defend their hive. "You scared?" asked Lieutenant Chen over the private channel. He was her wingman. Had been for 3 years. Terrified, Elena admitted. "You? Out of my mind. But my grandmother told me a story before I shipped out." Said her grandmother told her about ancestors who fought in the darkness. Capital D. She said when they were scared, they sang. Made them feel less alone. We're not allowed to use open channels during combat operations. I know. But private channel is fine. You know any songs? Elena laughed despite her fear. I know a few. The launch signal flashed. 200 fighters screamed out of the hangar bay into open space. And Elena's laughter died. Because ahead of them, emerging from tears in reality itself, came the void predators. And they were so much worse than the briefing videos had shown. Each one was massive, the size of a small moon, covered in what looked like organic armor that shifted and rippled like oil on water. They had no obvious propulsion systems, just moved through space as if they owned it. Red eyes, thousands of them, covered their surfaces, and as Elena watched, one creature opened what might have been a mouth, revealing a void of absolute darkness that seemed to pull at her soul even from this distance. All fighters, break by squadrons, the wing commander ordered. Execute pattern Alpha 7. Engage at will. Elena Dove, her squadron following. The tactics were insane. Everything she had learned at the academy said they were suicide. No shields, minimal armor, relying on speed and maneuverability instead of defensive systems. But Admiral Okonkwo had been clear. Energy signatures attracted the predators. Better to be invisible prey than a bright target. She fired her kinetic cannons at a predator's flank, the rounds punching into its hide. Black ichor sprayed into space, and the creature shrieked, a sound that transmitted through vacuum and made her teeth hurt. It turned toward her squadron, those red eyes focusing with terrible intelligence. "Break! Break! Break!" Elena screamed, and the fighters scattered. The predator's tentacle lashed out, moving impossibly fast, and caught Lieutenant Ramirez's fighter. The ship simply crumpled, crushed like paper in a fist. No explosion, no debris. Just gone, absorbed into the creature's mass. Elena felt rage replace her fear. She came around for another pass, targeting the same wound she had made before. The predator's armor finally gave way, and they punched through to something vital. The creature spasmed and began to dissolve, its mass breaking apart into nothing. "First kill," someone shouted over the comm. "Squadron 7 has first kill," but there were thousands more, and they were getting smarter. On the bridge of the UES Valkyrie, Admiral Okonkwo watched the battle unfold across 100 displays. The predators had come in 3 waves, testing the fleet's defenses, probing for weakness. He had expected this. Predators always tested their prey first. "Move 3rd Fleet to intercept the northern group," he ordered. "Keep them separated. Don't let them mass up." "Sir, the Kethrin carriers are taking heavy losses," his tactical officer reported. "They're requesting permission to fall back." "Denied. If they fall back, the line collapses. Tell them to hold position and switch to pattern Delta. Use the swarm tactics we discussed." He knew how cold that sounded, ordering people to stay and fight when they were dying. But he also knew that if the formation broke now, the predators would tear through the fleet like paper. The only chance was to maintain cohesion, to fight as a unified force. A Tureth battlecruiser, the Wrath of Krath, pushed forward against orders, its commander deciding to engage a particularly large predator directly. Marcus wanted to stop them, but he was too late. The battlecruiser fired everything it had, massive kinetic rounds that would have destroyed a planet. They barely scratched the predator. The creature enveloped the ship in a field of darkness. Marcus watched on the tactical display as the battlecruiser's energy signature simply vanished. 2,000 Turath warriors, gone in seconds. "All ships, this is Okonkwo." He broadcast on the fleet-wide channel. "Do not engage alone. Stay in formation. These things want us to break apart, so they can pick us off individually. We fight as one, or we die as individuals. Remember your training. Remember what they are. They're predators. And predators can be killed. Make them bleed." The human ships were performing better than the others, but even they were taking losses. The UES Defiant took a hit that vaporized half its hull. The survivors evacuated in escape pods seconds before the reactor went critical. The destroyer Tenacious rammed a predator at full speed, its crew having already abandoned ship, and took the creature with it in a massive explosion. But for every predator killed, another took its place, and the fleet was slowly being ground down. Then something changed. The predators began to hesitate. Not much, just a fraction of a second before attacking. But Marcus noticed. He had been watching for it, waiting for it. The predators were starting to associate this fight with pain. They were starting to fear. All ships, push forward, he ordered. They're breaking. Press the attack. Sir, we're at 60% strength. His XO protested. If we push now, and they don't break, they are breaking. Trust me. I've hunted enough predators to know when they're about to run. The fleet surged forward, and the predators' formation wavered. Then, impossibly, they began to withdraw. Not running, but pulling back, reassessing. It was exactly what Marcus had predicted. Do not pursue, he ordered immediately. Reform lines. Repair what we can. They'll be back. But we bought ourselves time. As the predators withdrew to the edge of the system, Marcus allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. They had survived the first engagement. Barely. The fleet had lost over 3,000 ships and nearly 500,000 personnel. But they had killed at least 700 predators and driven the rest back. The cost was devastating. But they were still fighting, and that was what mattered. Down on one of the lifeless planets in the Terminus system, a different battle was being fought. When the predators had broken through the fleet's lines, several hundred creatures had made it to the surface. They couldn't be allowed to stay there, to use the planet as a staging ground. So the Marines had gone in. Sergeant Carlos Martinez led his squad through the darkness of a massive canyon, hunting a predator that had burrowed into the rock. Above them, the dead sun cast no light. They relied on night vision and thermal imaging, stalking their prey in conditions that should have been impossible. Contact, whispered Private Lee. 200 meters, moving east. Carlos could see it on his HUD. A heat signature too large to be anything but a predator. But this one was different. Smaller than the others. Wounded, maybe, or young. It didn't matter. It had to die. Martinez to command. We have contact. Copy that, Sergeant. You're authorized for heavy ordnance. Carlos smiled grimly. Heavy ordnance meant they could use the really fun toys. Lee, Chen, set up the Mac cannon. Torres, Jackson, you're with me on demo charges. We're going to wake this thing up and make it wish it had stayed in bed. They moved into position, silent and efficient. The predator was in a cave, probably trying to heal from whatever had injured it in the space battle. It had chosen poorly. In open space, these things were nearly invincible. But down here, in the dark and the rocks, this was human territory. Carlos and his demo team planted charges at 3 points around the cave entrance. When they detonated, half the cliff face came down, sealing the exit. The predator inside shrieked, that reality-bending sound that made Carlos's bones ache, and tried to phase through the rock. But whatever power let them move through space didn't work as well through solid matter. Now! Carlos shouted, and Lee opened fire with the Mac cannon. Magnetic accelerator cannons were designed for ship-to-ship combat, not ground ops. Using one on a planet's surface violated about 20 different safety regulations. Carlos didn't care. The first round punched through the collapsed rock and into the cave. The second followed. The third. Each one moving at a fraction of light speed. Each one carrying enough kinetic energy to level a building. The cave system collapsed entirely, burying the predator under a mountain of rubble. Carlos waited, watching his sensors. The heat signature was still there, but fading. Fading. Gone. Contact eliminated, he reported. Moving to next target. They had 14 more predators to hunt before the night was over. It was going to be a long night. Back in space, Admiral Okonkwo met with the other fleet commanders via holographic conference. General Krathzon's image showed the Turath warrior covered in soot and bandages. He had been on the bridge when a predator had breached his ship's hull. Half his crew was dead. We cannot sustain losses at this rate, Krathzon said bluntly. My fleet is at 40% strength. The Kethrin are worse. If they attack again with the same force, we will break. They won't, Marcus said. They're regrouping because we hurt them. Predators don't continue an attack when they're taking significant casualties. They pull back, reassess, look for easier prey, and when they realize we are the only prey available, asked the Valorian commander, then they'll come back. But they'll be cautious. And cautious predators make mistakes. Marcus pulled up tactical projections. We hurt them badly. 700 confirmed kills, probably more. They expected an easy hunt and found a war. That changes their behavior. You speak with certainty about creatures we barely understand, a Kethran commander said. I speak with the certainty of 60,000 years of evolution, Marcus replied. My ancestors fought these things in the abyssal expanse. We learned their patterns, their behaviors, their weaknesses. That knowledge is in my genes, in every human's genes. And it's keeping us alive. Genetic memory. Krathson said, his tone thoughtful. I am beginning to understand why the Council granted you command. You do not just fight these creatures. You know them. We know predators, Marcus corrected. And predators are all the same. Whether they're hunting on savannas or in the darkness of space, they follow patterns. They can be predicted. They can be killed. Then tell us how to kill them, the Valorian commander said. Because right now, we are just dying slowly. Marcus nodded. Here's what's going to happen. They'll come back in about 6 hours, I estimate. But this time, they'll try a different approach. They'll send smaller groups from multiple directions, trying to divide our forces. We're not going to let them. We're going to consolidate into a tighter formation, make them come to us, and when they do, we're going to hit them with everything we have, all at once. Overwhelming force at point of contact. That contradicts your earlier orders about spreading out, someone objected. Earlier, we needed to keep them separated. Now we need to kill them in large numbers quickly. The tactics change based on their behavior. Marcus looked around at the assembled commanders. I know this is hard. I know it goes against your training. But trust me. Provided. Trust that humanity learned these lessons in blood 60,000 years ago. And we haven't forgotten. Even if we tried. The commanders agreed, some reluctantly. Marcus ended the conference and sat back in his chair, feeling the weight of command pressing down on him. He was asking these people to trust human instincts over their own military doctrine. He was asking them to fight like predators instead of civilized warriors. But he was also giving them the only chance they had to survive. 6 hours later, as predicted, the predators returned. This time they came in smaller groups, attacking from 7 different vectors simultaneously. And just as Marcus had planned, the fleet was ready. The consolidated formation held. Ships that had been scattered across the system now fought side by side, supporting each other, concentrating firepower. When a predator tried to isolate a single vessel, 2 others would immediately move to assist. The predators adapted, trying to overwhelm single points with multiple creatures. The fleet adapted faster, rotating damaged ships out and fresh ones in, never giving the predators a chance to exploit a weakness. The battle raged for 18 hours without pause. Fighters launched, fought until their ammunition was gone, returned to rearm, and launched again. Capital ships fired until their kinetic cannons overheated, then used missiles, then lasers, then whatever they had left. Marines fought hand-to-hand on ships that had been boarded, using knives and bare hands when their guns ran out of ammunition. And slowly, painfully, the tide began to turn. The predators were dying faster than they could adapt. For every ship they destroyed, they lost 3 of their own. The math was finally working in the fleet's favor, though the cost was staggering. Over 6,000 ships had been lost. Nearly 1 million people were dead. But the predator swarm was breaking. On the UES Valkyrie, a young ensign noticed something on the long-range sensors. Sir, we're detecting a massive energy signature at the edge of the system. I've never seen readings like this. Marcus looked at the display and felt his blood run cold. The signature was enormous, easily 10 times larger than any predator they had fought. That's their prime entity. The Alpha Predator. The one controlling the swarm. How do you know? Because that's how pack hunters work. There's always an alpha. Marcus was already running tactical calculations. If we kill that thing, the swarm loses coordination. They'll revert to individual predators. Still dangerous, but not organized. How do we kill it? His XO asked. I don't know yet, but we're going to figure it out. The prime entity emerged fully into normal space, and every sensor in the fleet screamed warnings. It was so massive that its gravitational field was affecting nearby asteroids. Its hide was covered in battle scars, some of them looking like they were 60,000 years old. This creature had fought humanity before, in the ancient war, and survived. It was remembering, and it was coming for revenge. Marcus stared at the monster on his display, feeling something stirring in the back of his mind. Genetic memory. Awakening. His ancestors had fought this thing before. They had wounded it, driven it to sleep, but they hadn't killed it. This time would be different. This time, humanity remembered. And this time, they wouldn't stop until the nightmare was dead. All ships, Marcus broadcast. We're about to engage the Alpha. This is what we came here to do. Make it count. The prime entity moved forward, and the final battle began. The prime entity was ancient beyond measure. It had witnessed the birth and death of stars, had consumed countless civilizations, had ruled the darkness between galaxies for eons. It remembered everything, including the small creatures that had dared to resist it 60,000 years ago. The humans. As it moved through the Terminus system, it felt something it had not experienced in millennia. Not fear. Not yet. But something close to it. Recognition. The small ships attacking it were using tactics the humans had used in the ancient war. The same aggression. The same refusal to flee. The same terrible persistence that had driven the predators into hibernation. The prime entity had thought time would have softened the humans, made them weak. It was wrong. On the bridge of the UES Valkyrie, Admiral Marcus Okonkwo watched the prime entity approach and felt knowledge flooding his mind that he shouldn't possess. He could see the creature's weak points, places where its armor was thinner, where ancient wounds had never fully healed. He knew how it would move, how it would attack, because some part of him had fought it before. Target coordinates Delta 7 and Delta 12, he ordered. Concentrate all fire on those positions. Sir, those appear to be the most heavily armored sections, his tactical officer said. Trust me. Those are scars from the old war. The armor there is thicker because it's covering weak spots. Hit them hard enough, and they'll breach. The fleet opened fire. Thousands of kinetic rounds, missiles, and energy weapons struck the prime entity simultaneously. The creature's shields, if they could be called that, flickered and held, but Marcus could see the damage. Small cracks appearing in the armor at exactly the points he had targeted. The prime entity responded with devastating force. Tendrils of darkness shot out, each one capable of destroying a battleship. Ships vanished, their crews consumed in an instant. The UES Defiant Mark II, named after the destroyer that had been lost at Apex Prime, took a direct hit and broke apart. 3,000 lives gone in a heartbeat. Marcus felt each loss like a physical blow, but he couldn't stop now. All ships, execute pattern Omega. We're going in close. Sir, that's suicide. His XO protested. It's suicide to stay out here and let it pick us off. Close range negates its ability to phase through space. It has to fight us, directly. The fleet dove toward the prime entity like a swarm of angry insects attacking a bear. It was insane. It violated every principle of modern naval combat. But Marcus's instincts, 60,000 years old, and screaming in his mind, told him it was the only way. The close-quarters battle was chaos. Ships weaved between the prime entity's tentacles, firing at point-blank range. Fighters strafed its hide, looking for weak points. The creature thrashed and shrieked, and space itself seemed to bend around it. General Krathzon's flagship, the Pride of Turath, took a position directly beneath one of the Prime Entity's main body sections, and fired everything it had upward. The Tureth general's voice came over the command channel, roaring with battle fury. "For the wrath of Krath! For the fallen! For the galaxy!" The barrage punched through the weakened armor, and black ichor sprayed into space. The Prime Entity's shriek, this time, was different. Pain. Real pain. It tried to shake off the pride of Turath, but Krathzon held position, continuing to fire even as his ship's hull began to buckle under the gravitational stress. "Krathzon, pull back," Marcus ordered. "You've done enough damage." "Negative, Admiral. A Tureth warrior does not retreat when the enemy is wounded." "I will finish this." The pride of Turath fired its final salvo, point blank into the wound it had created. The rounds penetrated deep into the Prime Entity's core, and something critical was hit. The creature convulsed violently, and the pride of Tureth was caught in the spasm, crushed like an egg. But the damage was done. The Prime Entity was critically wounded. "All ships, concentrate fire on the breach," Marcus ordered. The entire fleet focused on the massive wound Krathzon had created. Weapons fire poured in, widening the breach. Pushing deeper, the Prime Entity tried to phase away, to escape into dimensional space. But the damage was too severe. It was stuck in normal space, unable to flee, forced to fight to the death. Marcus saw his opening. The UES Valkyrie was a battlecruiser, one of humanity's largest warships. It was also dying. Half its systems were offline, the hull was breached in dozens of places, and the reactor was barely stable. But it had enough power left for one more thing. "All hands, abandon ship," Marcus ordered. "I repeat, all hands, abandon ship. You have 60 seconds. His exo stared at him. "Sir, what are you doing?" "What my ancestors did 60,000 years ago. What humans do when they're cornered." Marcus pulled up the ramming course, aiming directly for the breach in the Prime Entity's hide. "They taught these things to fear us. Time to remind them why." "Sir, that's an order, Commander." "Get everyone to the escape pods. I'll stay and make sure we hit the target." The crew evacuated. Marcus watched them go, feeling strangely calm. He thought about his wife back on Earth, about his children, who would grow up in a galaxy that didn't have to fear the void predators. He thought about all the people who had died to get them to this point, about Krathzon and his sacrifice, about the millions who had fallen in the past month. He would give them victory, whatever it cost. The Valkyrie accelerated, punching through the defensive tentacles, taking hits that would have destroyed it if it weren't already dying. Marcus overrode the safety protocols and directed all remaining power to the engines. The ship screamed toward the Prime Entity at a significant fraction of light speed, and there was nothing the creature could do to stop it. At the last second, Marcus activated the reactor's overload sequence. The Valkyrie struck the breach, penetrated deep into the Prime Entity's core, and detonated. The explosion was visible across the entire system. The Prime Entity's massive form shuddered, convulsed, and began to dissolve. Its death scream transmitted through dimensions that human science couldn't measure. And every void predator in the system felt it. Their alpha was dead. Their coordinator was gone. Their ancient enemy had killed their leader. For the first time in their eternal existence, the void predators felt true fear. The remaining creatures in the system lost coordination immediately. They stopped fighting as an organized force and reverted to individual predators, confused and frightened. The fleet, battered but not broken, moved in for the kill. It took another 6 hours to hunt down every predator in the system, but it was no longer a battle. It was an extermination. Commander Elena Vasquez, now the senior surviving officer on what remained of her squadron, led the final sweep through the outer system. They found small groups of predators trying to flee, trying to find dimensional rifts to escape through. Her fighters showed no mercy. Every creature that had come to destroy Earth died in the Terminus system. When it was finally over, when the last predator had been killed and the system was clear, Elena sat in her cockpit and cried. She cried for Lieutenant Chen, who had died covering her retreat 3 hours into the battle. She cried for Admiral Okonkwo, who she had only met once but who had saved them all. She cried for everyone they had lost. Then she dried her eyes, straightened her uniform, and led her squadron home. 3 months later, the Galactic Council convened again. But the chamber looked different now. Human architectural elements had been incorporated into the design. Human flags hung beside those of the other member species. And at the center of the chamber, where the speaker's platform had once stood alone, there were now 8 platforms instead of 7. Ambassador Elena Kovacs stood on the 8th platform, representing humanity. But she was no longer a probationary observer. She was a full member of the council, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. The speaker, who had lost 2 of his clutch brothers in the war, addressed the assembly. We gather today to formally recognize humanity's membership in the Galactic Council. But more than that, we gather to thank them. Without human leadership, without their ancient knowledge and terrible courage, we would all be dead. The void predators would have consumed every living being in this galaxy. A murmur of agreement ran through the chamber. The other species had learned much in the past 3 months. They had learned about the abyssal expanse, about humanity's true origins, about the ancient war that had shaped an entire species into weapons against the darkness. We also gather to establish the Vigil Fleet. The speaker continued. A permanent military force, led by humanity, dedicated to ensuring the void predators never threaten us again. Small groups still exist in the deep dark, scattered and hiding. They must be hunted down. They must be eliminated. And humanity has volunteered to lead this effort. Elena stepped forward. The Vigil Fleet will consist of ships from all member species, but it will operate under protocols developed by human military strategists. We have learned, at terrible cost, how to fight these creatures. We will teach others. We will patrol the darkness. And we will ensure that what happened at Terminus never happens again. She paused, looking around the chamber. But I want to be clear about something. Humanity did not ask for this responsibility. We didn't ask to be the galaxy's warriors, to be the species that knows how to kill. We would much prefer to be explorers, scientists, artists. But we are what the universe made us. And if that means we stand watch while others sleep, if that means we hunt nightmares so others don't have to, then we will accept that burden. The Valorian representative, their energy field still dimmed from the loss of their homeworld, spoke. You say you do not wish to be warriors. But warriors are what the galaxy needs. We spent 50,000 years telling ourselves we were civilized, that violence was beneath us. The void predators taught us that civilization is a luxury purchased with the blood of those willing to fight for it. We do not fear you, a Kethran senator added. We are grateful to you. You saved us. More than that, you showed us that survival sometimes requires embracing the darkness within ourselves. We will not forget. The formal vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted full council membership and given command of the Vigil Fleet. But there were other changes too. Human military advisors were attached to every council fleet. Human tactical doctrine became required study at all military academies. Human history, including the dark truth about their origins, was added to school curriculums across the galaxy. The other species needed to understand what humans were. Not to fear them, but to remember that the universe was not always kind. And sometimes, survival required becoming something terrible. After the ceremony, Elena found herself standing at the observation deck, looking out at the stars. She thought about Admiral Okonkwo, who had sacrificed himself to kill the prime entity, about General Krathzon, who had wounded it first, about the 1,000,000 people who had died at Terminus, and the billions who had died in the initial predator attacks. They're calling it humanity's war, a voice said beside her. She turned to see a young Turath warrior, one of Krathzon's descendants. But it was all of our war. We all fought. We all bled. That's true, Elena agreed. But humans led the way. We knew how to fight because our ancestors fought before and passed that knowledge down through our genes. Without that, we all would have died. Do you think they're really gone? The void predators? The main swarm is destroyed. The prime entity is dead. But there are still small groups out there, hiding in the deep dark. That's what the Vigil Fleet is for. We'll hunt them down, every last one, until the species is extinct. That's genocide, the Tureth said quietly. Yes, Elena admitted. It is. And I struggle with that. But these creatures will never stop hunting us. They can't be reasoned with. Can't be negotiated with. It's us, or them. And I choose us. The Turath was quiet for a moment. My ancestor, General Krathzon, said something before he died. He said humanity frightened him. But that was good because if humans frightened him, the void predators should be terrified. I understand now what he meant. Humanity is scary, not because you're evil, but because you're survivors. You do whatever it takes, pay whatever cost, endure whatever pain, to ensure your species continues. That's terrifying, but it's also why we're all still alive. Elena smiled sadly. We're not heroes. We're just too stubborn to die. Sometimes, that's the same thing. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, people were rebuilding. The Valorians were slowly returning to their dead homeworld, trying to reignite its crystalline structures. The Kethrin were repopulating their lost colonies. Every species was recovering, healing, remembering, but they were also changing. The ancient assumption that violence was primitive, that civilized species rose above such things, was being re-evaluated. The void predators had taught the galaxy a hard lesson. You needed people willing to embrace the darkness and fight monsters on their own terms. And for that, the galaxy now had humanity. In the deep dark, in the spaces between stars where light rarely reached, small groups of void predators hid. They remembered the war. They remembered the prime entity's death. They remembered the small creatures who refused to die, who fought with terrible efficiency, who knew their weaknesses and exploited them without mercy. The predators had haunted the galaxy for eons, an eternal nightmare that could not be escaped. Now, they were the ones being haunted. Hunted by human-led fleets that never stopped, never gave up, never showed mercy. The predators had become prey, and they finally understood the fear they had inflicted on others. Humanity had spent 60,000 years forgetting the war in the abyssal expanse. They had tried to become peaceful, civilized, gentle. But the universe had reminded them what they truly were, not despite their kindness, but because of it. They were warriors, because they loved enough to fight for what they cherished. They were hunters, because they refused to let the darkness take those they protected. They were terrifying because they were, at their core, survivors who would do anything to ensure their children grew up in a safe galaxy. The void predators had made a fatal mistake. They had believed that time would weaken humanity, that 60,000 years of peace would make them soft. They were wrong. Time hadn't weakened the instincts, hadn't dulled the edge. It had just hidden them, waiting for the moment they would be needed again. And when that moment came, humanity remembered. Remembered the darkness. Remembered the war. Remembered how to hunt the things that hunted them. 20 years later, a young human cadet at the Galactic Naval Academy asked her instructor a question. "Sir, why do the other species look at us differently? Like they're grateful, but also afraid?" The instructor, a veteran of Terminus, thought about his answer. Because we showed them what humans really are. Not the peaceful explorers we pretend to be, not the friendly diplomats or clever scientists. We showed them the survivors, the hunters, the things that evolved in the darkness and learned to master it. We showed them that when you back humans into a corner, when you threaten what they love, they don't surrender. They become something that even nightmares should fear. Is that a good thing? It's necessary. The galaxy is not always kind. There are things in the dark that want to hurt us, and someone needs to stand watch against them. That's our burden. That's our gift. We remember how to fight monsters so others can forget. The cadet thought about that, then nodded. Then I'll learn to fight them too. Good, the instructor said. Because the vigil never ends. The hunt never stops. That's the promise humanity made. As long as darkness exists, as long as things that would harm the innocent lurk in the void, there will be humans watching, humans waiting, humans ready to hunt. And in the deep dark, the last void predators fled before the advancing vigil fleet, understanding too late the ancient truth that humanity had learned 60,000 years ago in the abyssal expanse. In the eternal competition between predator and prey, the species that survives isn't always the strongest or the fastest. It's the one that refuses to give up, that adapts to any environment, that hunts with intelligence and persistence and absolute determination. The void predators had been apex predators for eons. But they had finally met something higher on the food chain. Not because humans were stronger or more numerous, but because humans, when threatened, became the predator's predator, the hunter of hunters, the thing that nightmares checked under their beds for, before going to sleep. The galaxy had gazed upon humanity's true nature during the war. They had seen the fear that humans had been carrying in their genes for 60,000 years. And they understood now that this fear wasn't a weakness. It was a warning, a reminder of what humans had faced and overcome, a promise of what humans would do to protect those they loved. The void predators were dying out, hunted to extinction by the very prey they had tried to consume. And as the last of them fled into the deepest darkness they could find, they carried with them a new fear, a fear that would haunt them forever, if they lived that long. The fear of humanity. The galaxy was safe, not because the darkness had been banished, but because humanity stood watch in that darkness, hunting the hunters, protecting the peaceful, ensuring that nightmares stayed where they belonged, in the shadows, running, afraid, and dying one by one under the relentless pursuit of the species that evolution had forged in fire and darkness and blood. The species that had learned the ultimate truth of survival. Sometimes